I think 60% of current GDP of the industry is going to disappear.
60%.
And I think I'm being conservative. Do we need agencies? The current AI, for example, are just pattern matching. They do not understand. AI has reached its limits. The scaling law is failing. So they created faster computers, but they broke maths in the process.
And there's rounding errors.
That rounding off error is the reason why if you ask ChatGPT the same question 10 times, it will give you 10 different answers. The school of thought that is correlation-based, scale-based is the one that won because it's the one that was sellable. It's going to be like a handmade Rolls Royce. It's going to be super expensive but super desirable because it's rare. Those systems can mimic all they want, but
It's Zai Zwobo. So
Yes.
good to have you here. I first saw you present a few weeks back, and I was totally blown away. It's not often that I watch a presenter and I feel like, wow, I can learn something from this guy. Not just your domain knowledge, but your ability to present. So I thought I have to have you on the pod. So thank you so much for being here.
sure, thank you. These are like really kind words. So thank you for the kind words.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about where you grew up.
So I was born and bred in Zimbabwe. Did my whole primary, high school, and varsity. And that's when, after that, I trekked into South Africa in 2005. I studied mathematics at the University of Zimbabwe. And my first job in this world was as a maths teacher. So teaching is the first love, yeah. That's me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So educator, causal AI scientist.
Yes.
We were laughing before this. I read it as casual on your profile. I thought that was quite funny when I figured it out.
Yeah.
Data scientist. You also talk about first principles quite a lot. That's what I've picked up as a pattern. We have that in common. I speak about that quite often too.
Nice.
Specializing really in mathematics. Your book, Mathematics for Disruption.
Yes, that's it.
I haven't read it yet. I plan on reading it very soon. I managed to get the ebook version of it from your website.
Nice.
Love to learn more about it today, so we'll go through some of that. And now, more recently, it seems like you've made a very big shift into marketing technology, into the marketing industry. So I think there's a lot of overlaps there. Who are your influences? Who are the people that you've learned from, the people you've been mentored by, inspired by?
So there are quite a lot of people that have been influences along the way. Post-varsity and the fact that I now call myself a causal AI scientist or a causal data scientist, there's a guy called Judea Pearl, Jewish guy who's based in California. He's a Turing Award winner. So Turing Award is like the Nobel Prize for computer science. And so what he did was that he invented what are known as Bayesian belief networks, where the idea of creating smart algorithms that update their knowledge with new evidence. So remember, there's classical statistics, then there's Bayesian statistics. So the idea is that as you learn, as you get more information, right, more evidence, you become smarter and you update your understanding. So I read his book, his seminal book called The Book of Why, right? And it's the book that really teaches people how to think in terms of causality, not just from a scientific perspective, but understanding the mechanisms that literally govern almost anything on Earth, literally cause and effect. And it's something that is important even for our algorithms and our AI. For it to be smarter, it first has to have understanding of cause and effect, and that because that's fundamental. So Judea Pearl is that one person.
What do you think that creative leaders or leaders in this particular field can really learn from that cause and effect? What do you think is the big takeaway that they can potentially learn?
So, the good part is that in the creative world, it's like the marketing world and all, they actually understand the idea of causality because they've been struggling with the idea of attribution modeling, where to say, did someone buy this T-shirt because I showed them the ad, right? In as much as they don't have the techniques and tools to effectively answer that, but they know that the moment they are able to do that, then that's almost like the asymptotic solution that will literally solve everything. So they do understand it. So in terms of system building, even in a creative world, it's important to know what are the key drivers of outcomes that we have, right? Whether it's selling or whether it's coming up and saying, will this a nice looking burger or nice looking picture that I've drawn, I'm giving references in the advertising world, will it cause someone to actually go and buy, or will it cause someone to tell someone else about, will it make it viral? Will it make it? So it's fundamental in the business space, and it's also fundamental for managers as well, because we talk about ROI, return on investment and stuff like that. But can we decisively say, if I lift Kyle by certain units, will it result in Y? So it's almost like that equation that you were writing in school, Y is equal to mx plus c, to say, if I change X, will it result in Y? Of which that's something that we cannot decisively say at the moment because the tools are not there. And it's as a result of some of the decisions that we've made technologically in terms of what is easy to achieve. I'll give you an example. The current AI, for example, you find it's based on deep learning. And deep learning is based on correlation as a system, right? So it's a correlation system. It knows that A is related to B. It can pattern match, but it doesn't know that A equals B or B equals A, but it just knows there's a relationship. So that means that we are doing correlation at scale. In as much as ChatGPT, Claude, and them, they sound very, very smart, but in actual fact, they are just pattern matching based on the corpus of data that they've read on the internet, and they do not understand. So that's where now maybe we'll have to maybe first of all agree on what is understanding.
Wow. Okay. So if we had to start at that baseline, right, the AI doesn't necessarily have a reality. Like, it's not operating within, as we would call them, like fundamentals of reasoning that we would usually use. It's using its own set based on points of inference, things that it's learnt. That's my understanding of what you've said.
Yes.
So if that's correct, how would you teach it to understand? What would you do?
Yes. So you find, just to echo what you said, there is something called Plato's Allegory of the cave, where they are prisoners in a cave. There are three prisoners. They have never seen the outside of the prison. All they've seen are shadows that are cast on the wall of the prison. So you find the shadows that come up every day. There's a tree, a car, and objects. So they have come up with their own interpretation of those objects, of those shadows. Now, can we say that those prisoners understand the world? Do those prisoners know what a tree is? Do they understand what a car is? Or they have seen a car often enough and they've come up with maybe a coherent way of describing and explaining that which they're seeing on the wall. So it means that you are seeing a version of reality that is not reality, of which that's what our AIs are doing. Our AIs are literally projecting the interpretation of reality. That is because they've read how other people have experienced reality, and they're using that as their understanding for reality. So another example to make it as understandable, if a chatbot or an AI can diagnose diseases, can come up with medical explanations, it's not because it has lived in the real world, but then it took data from doctors and opinions that were online, and it used that as its knowledge. But it's not in the real world. So there's that delta, that gap of never experiencing the world that might actually be difficult to make AIs as smart as humans. So maybe that's our saving grace as humans.
What do you think actually differentiates us at a human level? What is the thing that AI will struggle the most to replace? What is your interpretation of that?
So, like I've already said, cause and effect. That's something that we are inherently seekers of causes and effects. I've seen, in my culture, in my Shona culture in Zim, even when a 90-year-old woman dies, they will go to the Sangoma to find out, to say, why did she die? But, the sense of time dictated that the person was supposed to depart. It's natural. But, people just want closure. They want to understand why is it, how is it, why, that kind of stuff.
We want a reason.
A reason, yeah. They want a reason. And then you'll find that in terms of anything I'm going to say about AI, by the way, I'm going to give a disclaimer and say the current version of AI, because I don't want 10 years from now and this podcast will age badly when when they can do things that I'm saying they can't do right now, right? So currently, with the version of AI that we have, things that are fuzzy, that don't have well laid out rules, that are not abstract, right? It struggles a lot. Things that require things like empathy, things like ethics, things between the lines, That's why when you're prompting, you have to be as explicit as possible. Tell it, do this, don't do this to the exact T. Because if you don't, it's not going to be like a human being that's going to read between the lines and actually maybe understand what you're saying, So it cannot read between the lines. It is programmatic because it's a statistical machine that's rules-based, in as much as it shows a lot of flexibility. At the end of the day, the underlying structure is is very rigid. And then the other thing is that because deep learning is rooted in neural networks, you find that no one, even the guys who at Anthropic or at OpenAI, they don't know how it allocates its weights when it's actually answering to us. It's a black box system. So there's an input, a process that is in a black box system, and an output. But the thing is, they are taking an expedient approach where they are saying that as long as we put an input and the output makes sense, then it's working. You get it? So that's how it... But to say, can we actually go back and interrogate how it came to that conclusion? And no one knows because, we're dealing with billions and billions of parameters, and we as human beings have no capacity to actually comprehend at that level. So the fact that it's a black box system is actually very problematic. But then some people are with their counter arguments are saying, but also the brain is so complex that even our processing methods are also black box. So that's a counter argument to that as well. But to go back slightly to your previous question, what can we do to try and improve the AI? One simple thing is just understanding that data, right? It has been sold to us as the new oil, as the new gold, as the new what. But the problem with data is that data is inconsequential because data is a byproduct of activity, right? So what we should be focusing on is understanding the mechanisms of activities, right? So if I understand the process that's creating the data, then I know that if I do X, it results in Y. I can manipulate, right, the data. I can imagine. And the data is just a consequence of me doing something. I'll give you a practical example to explain this concept that I'm trying to say. So right now I'm wearing an Apple Watch, right? And an Apple Watch is useless if there's no activity. But if I'm saying to myself, I'm going to walk from here to that point, right? The activity of walking is the one that's generating the data. The data that you're seeing is just a record of what I did, imprinted in some metrics that we agreed upon, that walking shall be measured in distance and all that. So now, if I want to improve the stats on my Apple Watch, I could analyze that data for days. I could do whatever, but as long as I don't understand the process that gave me that data, I have a superficial understanding of what this data means. But then if I understand that, okay, walking is a process where you put one leg forward and the other, and you continue with that process in a recurring manner and using friction of the ground to move forward, then I'll understand that, okay, maybe if I increase the frequency of alternation, then it means maybe now I'm actually walking fast, right? Brisk walking. And if I increase it even further, now it turns into running. And then I can see the jump. So it means I can actually control what I'm seeing on the data based on understanding of the process, such that I can manipulate it. And I can even imagine to say, okay, what if we could do 3,000 steps per second? What does that mean? You understand? I can imagine. Maybe we're now flying or whatever, you know? So understanding the data generating process is important. But the problem now is that AI was captured by the computer scientists and the statisticians. And the statisticians are actually victims of their own rules, right? Like the assumption of normality. I mean, what's normal?
What I'm hearing you say is, if we truly understood that action within the black box, we could go from, in your analogy, walking, well, we don't even know how we're walking right now within the black box, to running, potentially to flying. That's part of the acceleration right now, in my understanding, rudimentary. We've got big corporations adding a lot of compute and a lot of power in order to get AI to give us better answers faster, based on billions of parameters of data, as you said. And if I'm understanding you correctly, what you're saying is, if we got to truly understand the way that it was producing that, if we really comprehended that somehow, in spite of all those billions of parameter and data points, we'd be able to get it to accelerate without needing necessarily to add all that compute power, without using brute force.
That's it. You find that capitalism as a system is premised around the idea of accumulation, right? And you find that the people that have literally led the AI revolution are by their very nature capitalists, right? So they came with that notion that bigger is better, and they pushed a version of AI that was, one, scalable, fundable from a VC model perspective. And if you look at the people that have actually led the AI revolution, they were coming straight from Silicon Valley. So they came with a Silicon Valley mindset, like your Sam Altmans and them. So to them, bigger is better. But then right now, as we speak, AI has reached its limits. I mean, when ChatGPT 3 came in 2022, it was like, wow, that was like a step change, right? And then when ChatGPT 4 came, it was like, wow, right? It was like a leap like this. But now, have you seen that the changes are very
incremental?
They're incremental because they are reaching the limits of that scaling, because you can't scale forever. That's why you find someone like Ilya Sutskever, one of the founders of OpenAI. He left though. He started, I think, something called superintelligence or something like that. You find he is now talking about the scaling laws failing, right? So it's choices that we made. And we did it because it was easy to find, it was scalable, it was also the easy path, because there were many types of AIs that existed, right? There was the neurosymbolic school of thought right, that advocated for understanding the nodes and edges on in networks, right? Understanding the actual processes and mapping them out, process mapping and all that. But that's not scalable, and it's more difficult to do. Then you've got Judea Pearl and them talking about causal AI. It's also difficult to prove causality. But when you do prove it, it's actually far, far much better than the scalars and the big data movement that won in Silicon Valley. So you find, if we go back even into the history of technology, you see that some of this technology were not inevitable. They were just choices for expedience, like I've mentioned. You see that during Tesla and Edison's time. Edison was VC funded and he had backers, financial backers. Tesla didn't. But Tesla had alternate current and Edison had direct current, right? If it wasn't for Tesla fighting until he got the contracts to do the power generation in the US, we wouldn't have this electricity. We would still be using batteries because Edison would have won, If you go back and come in history, you'll see that every technology that won, it wasn't because it was the best. It was because the right people were backing it, whether it was researchers, whether it was financiers, whether it was... So it's just choice, right? The power of choice. So with us, right now with AI, the school of thought that is correlation-based, that is scale-based, is the one that won because it's the one that was sellable, because they could raise billions. But those who were doing what are known as real-world models that are difficult, they couldn't. But I like the fact that now everyone is realizing that we've reached the limits. Now they're trying to go back to try and incorporate post hoc, right? To incorporate some of these things that will actually help them to be smarter. So that's why now you find people like Elon Musk, they are now amassing real-world data through Tesla and that kind of thing. They're now creating humanoids and all that are feeling, that are experiencing the world, almost mimicking the world at a human level. So yes, people have realized that we were racing to nowhere just because of scale.
You have to tell me something to satisfy my own curiosity.
Yes.
So in doing the research for this conversation, I came across a statement by you, and if I could summarize it, and you can tell me the detail.
Okay.
I'm going to call it the rounding error.
Yeah.
Could you explain what that is, and
yes.
how does that? So explain it to me like I'm an 8th grader.
I'll try. So you find in mathematics, right? There are decimals. In fact, when we're in grade 8, we're taught about the number line, right? That's where you're introduced to the negative numbers, right? So you've got the number line. They're numbers called real numbers. So real numbers are positive and negative, and they've got commas as well, right? So those commas, so you've got numbers like pi, like e, that have decimal commas, points that go forever, like they don't stop, right? But now, let's say you're programming, and then you've got the number pi that you have to compute. But because it's got so many decimal points, it means that from an infrastructure and compute perspective, you're going to need more resources to be able to compute, to calculate all the decimal points. So that's why sometimes we actually cut pi to just 3.14, right? And then we put the squiggly equal sign to say almost equal to 3.14. We know that it's an approximation, right? So what we've done is we've done it because it's easier for us to do. So, but it's at the expense of what? Accuracy, right? But at least it's close enough to be usable. So there are things that you need to be as accurate as possible, and there are things that you can actually have the accuracy and compute almost like a trade-off, right? So that's the same thing that computer scientists did, right? In the 80s, 90s. They realized that calculating some of these things to so many decimal points is a problem. So they said, okay, you know what? We're going to break the laws of mathematics. Because mathematics, traditional mathematics that is based on what are known as the axioms of arithmetic. An axiom is a self-evident truth that you don't need to prove. So all the proofs of mathematics are based on the axioms, right? So now if you check, computer scientists said, okay, we're going to break that in the interest of what? Of creating faster computers. So they created faster computers, but they broke maths in the process, right? So now it means that computers don't follow the normal maths that we know in real life. That's where now the rounding off element we're talking about. Then fast forward to 2025. Our good friend, our good South African friend, Elon Musk says, okay, you know what? We're using too much electricity. Our models are too slow. I'm going to take it a step further, right? I'm just going to remove all decimal places. So you find that with Tesla and Grok and all that, he removed the decimal places. He's using integer mathematics for his computation, and it's faster. But obviously it's at the expense of what? Accuracy. But it's faster. And you find when it's dealing with rockets, with cars, with robots, you don't need to be that accurate. So it's a trade-off that works for him. And you could even argue that it's good for the environment because you're using less power. So it goes back to the idea of its choices, right? But unfortunately, you and I, when we learned mathematics and science, we learned that these are subjects that are dogmatic, that are rules-based. You cannot be creative within mathematics. But, Elon Musk is being creative and is achieving the results. So it's choices that were made, and it was for performance purposes, yeah.
Essentially, computer science in and of itself isn't necessarily totally accurate because they've made those trade-offs that you mentioned. They've opted for easier, faster, in some cases, in terms of the decisions they've made, instead of accuracy. Where does this leave us with AI and the inaccuracy of AI? If AI is computing as part of this process and there's rounding errors, does that mean that it could be part of the reason why AI hallucinates, AI is sometimes inaccurate?
That's it. So you find that that is one of the reasons why it hallucinates, because there has been a cut in terms of accuracy. So that rounding off error is the reason why if you ask ChatGPT the same question 10 times, it will give you 10 different answers. In as much as they might have proximity, they're close to each other, they might have the same semantic meaning, but they're different, you know? So the consistency is what is the problem, and it's as a result of the rounding off, you know. So if it's something that we're willing to live with, then we live with it. But it goes back also to where now we need your philosophers to come in and tell us what truth is. Is truth stagnant? Is truth dynamic? Maybe this is the new truth. It's something that we have to get from our humanities people.
I think it's called a super truth.
Super truth, okay.
Which means I say it's true, so therefore just is. Okay, so without consulting those philosophers as part of this exercise, how do you feel about that? Do you feel these AI platforms could actually be better if they were based on accurate maths? Is it worth the trade-off in terms of computing? Do you feel there's a space for somebody, maybe from Africa, to build a platform that is far stricter in terms of its rules? Or do you feel that would be a wasted exercise?
No, I think AI has developed very well. The positives are amazing in terms of productivity and stuff like that. It's where it is where it's supposed to be, right? In as much as we've taken wrong decisions along the way, but my call is for people to say, okay, to invest in actual long-term, the hard stuff, right? In as much as we're going with the expedient things, let's invest in the hard stuff, because there are people that are working on hard problems, but unfortunately they are underfunded. No, they don't grab the headlines, right? And also, let's not live in our own little bubbles, because you find, these AI companies, to convince investors, they've come up with their own metrics, right? Where they say the benchmark is this, but that benchmark is meaningless in this bigger scheme of things, So there are pockets of people across the world that are working on actual problems that have actual impact on people that need funding, as opposed to the headline-grabbing, scalable VC model type AI companies, right? And then also, we as Africans, and in fact in the global south, we also have to ask ourselves, because this AI was not designed to solve our problems, because our problems are different from the Northern Hemisphere, unfortunately. Because you find that in the Northern Hemisphere, right, these are aging populations, so they don't have enough workforce, right? So automation makes sense, because you need automated nurses, you need to cover the gap that's there as a result of what? Of them not making enough babies over the years, right? Now look at the global south now. We have an opposite problem, that AI is not solving that problem. Our problem is unemployment. And AI doesn't solve unemployment. It actually makes it worse. So it means that this AI, this current version of AI, is optimized for the Northern Hemisphere, for the developed countries that are struggling to cover the gap because they don't have enough people coming up, young people. So we should actually change the whole paradigm of AI and say that AI as it is, how can we use it to solve our realities? Because the population in Africa is growing. And if you look at a country like Cameroon, the average age is like 17, 18, What are they going to do with all those kids if corporations automate and lay off people? It doesn't make sense. So that's my plea to say, let's fund projects that are working on the hard problems that are relevant to the different geographies across the world, and it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Are you familiar with any of those particular projects? Is there anything that's of interest to you?
Yeah, obviously, I'm biased though, but obviously the stuff around causal AI. In fact, if you look at the Gartner Hype Index, you'll see that causal AI is coming, right? It's one of the technologies that are going to make AI smarter. So right now you find a lot of CEOs have invested a lot of money in AI, but they've actually not gotten their ROI. So now we're in the valley of disillusionment. I don't know if you know, where there's the hype and then it dips, and then later on you get the actual benefits of the technology after the noise is gone, and then the signal is accentuated. Yeah.
We talk about signal versus noise a lot as an industry, as decision makers, as entrepreneurs. Yeah. How would you suggest this audience, selfishly me, separates and distinguishes between the two when it comes to this industry?
So you find that there's an existential crisis, right? That's what we're reading about. That's what we're being told in the creative industry, marketing, advertising, where now I can just go in and get a nano banana and come up with, or a Seedance or any of those tools. But then the essence of what makes us human, what people resonate with, still resides with us. Those systems can mimic all they want, but we are still the custodians of human taste, human belief, the intangibles, right? So I would say that the most important thing is understanding, keeping in touch with what can AI can actually do, what can't it do, right? Don't read every headline that you see, or actually find out for yourself. Use the tools and see if you can produce 10 assets, right? Video assets, right? Or compared to the one that you're going to create from this podcast, right? You create and variants and see and compare, and then come up with your empirical evidence, or do A/B tests. Put it out. You'll be shocked also that because of the propaganda around AI, right? How it's going to change the world and all that. Yes, it is, but there's a lot of hyperbole in the process. People are starting to not care where an asset came from. I mean, there's so many establishments that are playing AI music to circumvent paying royalties and stuff like that. And people have accepted it. If you remember when we met at that conference, I played a song when I was going on stage, and that song had been #1 in South Africa, and it's an AI-generated song. And when you listen to it, it's an amazing song. Whether it was handmade or AI-made is irrelevant of the fact that it makes me feel in a certain way. So it's things that also we have to understand and maybe let go of some of the purist thinking that we have to say it's got to be made this way for it to have value. Maybe reality has changed. Maybe we need to move with the times and use these tools to the best of our ability. So at the end of the day, it's about understanding and being part of this revolution, understanding what is and what is not, what is noise, what is signal. You can only do that by actually using them.
And experimenting, from what I hear you say.
Yes.
So use the tools, be familiar with them. I'd say, if I could paraphrase you, be cautious of the propaganda around AI as well. And know the essence of humanity, taste, beliefs, the intangibles.
That's it.
Focus on those.
That's it. Yeah.
At the same time as experimenting?
Yes. The rate at which things are changing is so fast. It's like we're in a flux, a constant flux. So you actually have to multitask as you are trying to separate the noise from the signal. You are also you have to, and there's so many updates and new models, and so you actually have to find a way of multi-threading yourself in a way. Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed, I've picked up recently some of these AI CEOs are changing the narrative. So the story that they told initially for a long time, part of OpenAI's foundation was essentially anti-AI becoming the overlord, right? and they were very philosophically, they were pushing back against rapid disruption of the industry, rapid growth of the industry. It seems like between Sam Altman, Elon Musk, that's where it started. And it's not where it's ending right now. They've changed initially into the direction of saying, we're all very afraid, but we're going to do it anyway. Let's make sure we're the first ones. That's what we've been following for the last 3 years, really, is a lot of AI CEOs saying, it's going to take your jobs, but we're going to do it anyway. And wow, it's scary.
Scary, but
very frightening, but we're still going to make sure that we create general AI. You've got a Demis Hassabis, saying that is life's mission, right? And that's what they're going to do.
That's what they're going to do.
Recently, I've noticed the fear-mongering, the signals that they were constantly sending out, which seem to really work if you base it on stock price being the success factor. They seem to be changing.
No, the funny thing is that we've all been hearing Sam Altman and them talk about AGI. Who has ever defined AGI? I mean, if you ask 10 Silicon Valley CEOs right now to say, what is AGI? They'll tell you 10 different definitions.
Elon Musk's definition is Grok 5.
You see? Exactly. You see? So it's such a fuzzy concept of AGI that they've even dumped it because it's meaningless. Because some say we have achieved it already. Some say we haven't. It's because there's no proper parameter or way of measuring whether we are AGI or not. Now they're talking about super intelligence. I don't know if you've realized they've left the AGI concept, right? And then I think we are also being driven by FOMO. Because initially, there were lots of actors that were like actors in the field that said, let's have a moratorium. Let's wait, right, and figure this thing out. But they realized, okay, if I wait, what if this guy continues and then I'll be nowhere. So they are being driven by FOMO and fear, such that they're talking about the fears, but they're going. I mean, even the most responsible guy, the Anthropic guy, he's telling us about how fearful this thing is, but I mean, it's pushing forward. I don't know if you've been following the Mythos story.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, so with Mythos now, you find that they're saying that they've created something where a model where now it can identify almost like 0-day type vulnerabilities in systems, all sorts of systems, but it just doesn't identify. It can also exploit them. Now, so they did a limited release with partners like Amazon, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, just a few people to test and see the safety of this model. But at the same time, others are accusing him of using fear to push up his stock price. So we'll never know what his intentions are. From where I'm sitting, I'm like, okay, of the bunch, he sounds like the responsible guy, but we will never know.
It's a great positioning strategy. So, in my experience, when you position against an enemy, you tend to generate more of a community.
That's it.
And it's quite a simple approach. And when I first saw it, I must admit, I don't know if I'm just too critical or too cynical, but I saw the narrative that, they were essentially saying, we're against the big guy. We didn't sell out to the Pentagon.
Yes.
And my immediate reaction was, that's good positioning.
That's it.
And I think that is, I doubt that they aren't aware of that positioning. I think that they've done that intentionally, even if it is the truth and it's how they really feel. Yes. They are, of course, marketing themselves and doing exceptionally well. And their products are good. They're not as good as the hype.
Yeah.
So that also tells you.
Yeah. There's a lot of virtue signaling. And I mean, even the theory that they'd run out of compute. So that's why they had to do a limited release
and throttle back.
And throttle. And now they've made a big deal with Elon Musk. I don't know if you've seen where they've got now compute. They're not throttling anymore. So I think it's a more of a business issue than an ethics issue. But because if you virtue signal enough, you get a community, like you say. So so it could be good business decisions that he's making.
So let's talk about the fear a bit.
Okay.
I'll tell you what my personal fears are, and perhaps you can either make me more afraid of them or less afraid. I'm personally afraid, as somebody who's spent most of my career in the creative industry, as a creative strategist, as a creative technologist, as somebody who cares deeply about the creative product, and how I define that as the way that we go from, we'd really like, to achieve this particular objective. We'd really love to overcome this particular challenge. We'd love to serve an audience. This is how that audience needs to be served. Can you connect those dots? It's what we call a nested strategy. So can we achieve our business goals while being people first? I use people first principles.
Nice.
So people first principles means serve the audience.
That's it.
Serve a group of people, and if you can do it well, you can also achieve your business
Nice.
goals, overcome
Nice.
challenges, etc.
Yes.
Being somebody who's spent all that time trying to work that stuff out, my concern is that there are so many people like me training these models to do that work.
Yes.
Whether it's unbeknownst to them or not, they're using the models to solve problems.
Yes.
And it gets you to a point and a let's say an average.
Yeah.
Right? The rising tide is raising all the ships up to the average.
That's it.
The people who will then stand out are very rare.
Very rare.
I'm not particularly concerned for me, but I'm concerned for an industry where the industry, from a perception point of view, will be perceived as the industry that can be replaced. And that perception is my number one concern. I don't think it can totally be replaced. You've said already, there's a lot of actual skill in a human being that's very hard to replicate.
True.
But I'm concerned about the perception.
So the perception is already there. You find some corporates are actually firing their agencies and taking some of these functions in-house because their argument is that we are all drinking from the same well, so why can't we do it internally? But rightfully, as you said, the problem is that AI outputs are an average of the human knowledge that has been harvested by these AIs, and there is no distinctness, literally. That's why you find people start looking almost alike in terms of the people generated, in terms of images, videos. The language is almost the same, you know, the howevers, the M dashes and all that. We all lose variance, unfortunately. But the problem now is that in the creative world, variance and differentiation is the currency, right? And if we are all using the same average elements, then it takes a lot for you to operate at the edge of AI. That's where now maybe you actually need now to have interventions where you can use AI in conjunction with human beings, a hybrid model, and also if you've got data that's proprietary, that hasn't been mined yet by the AIs, then you could encode that into everything you do, right? That's where now the idea of having a data warehouse, an idea of having a knowledge base that literally has everything that you guys do as an agency or as an industry, then you'll be able to differentiate yourself. But you find the narrative is something that has to be fought for, because right now every CMO, every brand is looking to say, where can we save? Right? They are reading headlines on Bloomberg every day that such a company has fired so many people, they are gaining so much from AI, and they are looking to say, where can we get these gains, right? And in so doing, they are making a lot of mistakes because they are losing their souls actually in the process. So we actually now have to make sure and be proactive to make sure that the narrative that in the creative space, you need to have the human beings, because the essence of being human is still very much important, right? In as much as the reductionist, right? There's a school of thought of scientists called reductionist. The reductionist can tell you that the framework, the skeletal system for problem solving is simple, right? It's a 5-step process. Identify a problem, right? And this is something that we don't do very well in our schools, training people to identify problems, because in mathematics, for example, you are given John had 2 apples and all that, but so they gave you the problem. You didn't go out and identify a problem, right? And then the second thing after identifying a problem is to understand the problem. This is where now you're asking what, where, who, when, and paraphrasing and understanding, right? Once you've understood the problem, then you devise a plan, right? And then once you've devised a plan, you carry out the plan. And I think as a country, this is where we fail, because you find we devise plan, we come up with green papers and white papers about everything, even AI policies, right? And then carrying out now the implementation, right? And obviously now the evaluation. So it's identify a problem, understand the problem, devise a plan, carry out the plan, evaluate, of which it's not a straight line where you have to do those things sequentially. It's actually iterative. You can be iterating at any given time, right? Of which that's the same process, creative process that you just told me, right? So mathematically, that's the same process. If you look at any of the project management, business analysis, software development lifecycle, most of the frameworks of business are just those 5 steps, but obviously laced with industry jargon, depending on which industry you are in, just to make it fancy and to be able to charge more, right? Technically. So they can be reduced to that, but within those steps, now, that's where you need those human beings to be able to see between the lines, to be able to, because yes, you can teach an algorithm to follow the steps, but that thing, that intangible thing, you need the humans.
And a lot of that right now seems to be outsourced in spite of ourselves to AI.
Yes, it's called cognitive offloading, where now, because there's this thing, we are now lazy. Even people that were not lazy before are now lazy because there's a helper. So cognitive offloading is real.
I've been having AI breaks. So I haven't actually, this whole week, I haven't gone on any of the LLMs. And I spent a lot of time, as I'm sure you have, sparring, chatting, coming up with ideas, criticizing with AI. And I've tried them all, as I'm sure you have. And I actually have these breaks now.
Wow.
Because I found that despite doing my best to still do all the thinking, I was spending so much time on the platforms, and it was so habitual to go, oh, I've got this problem. I wonder what whatever it is, Claude will say. I wonder what Gemini will say. How will ChatGPT think about this? And I'd play them up against each other so often. And then, of course, workflows, of course, automations. Yes. It gets easier and easier. You build an agent. It's very exciting to let that agent take over. Yeah. And what I've realized is I actually need to take a break every now and then. It's almost like anti-screen time.
Anti-screen time. Oh yeah, we struggle with that with our kid.
with ourselves.
So yes, we are the kids now when it comes to AI, because we are hooked. It's so addictive, and it's so useful that you can't do without it. I applaud you for actually taking those breaks. I wish I could do that. In fact, it's something that I'm going to try. Hopefully, but I'm an addict.
Let me know how that goes for you.
Okay.
It's very hard. It's like itching for your phone. And,
yes.
But I have found that as somebody who cares deeply about my own capacity to solve problems for myself and to think. The podcast is called Never Think Alone, but I like to think alone occasionally, and I like to, of course, get and collect data, and I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with relying on a partner, a thinking partner, a colleague, which is essentially what AI becomes if you use it well. Yeah. But it's so easy to offload, as you said. And we laughed earlier, just to go back to it, about the AI policy. Yes. Because if you write an AI policy, for your country, like South Africa did, which you referenced earlier, by using AI, the irony was not lost on, I think, many people, that, it could be problematic. We've talked about so many different aspects of AI. We've talked about your point of view in terms of where you see AI developing and improving. We haven't talked about something that I think we have an overlap in an abstract way.
Yeah.
I use the phrase creativity needs constraints.
Yeah.
Probably once a week.
Yeah.
And I'm really passionate about creating the constraints. As a strategist, I see it as my role. And no matter how I get there, whether I use AI or not, I'm creating constraints.
That's it.
Because when I do that, I find a better creative product, a better creative outcome.
That's it.
Better problem solving. Because if you know the problem that you're solving,
that's it.
You can really leverage all of your brain power towards that. So could you tell me a little bit about, I've noticed you talk about constraints.
Yeah.
When it comes to Africa as a continent, when it comes to our unique set of constraints, and how that makes us better creatively, innovatively.
Yeah. So I think the framing issue in Africa is very rife. They make us feel like our problems are problems when our problems are actually opportunities. I mean, there are years that before COVID, I'd go to, like, every summer, I'd go to MIT or any of those types of institutions in Boston, right? Your Harvards and all that. And I'd go for startup meetups and all that. And then you hear that somebody has created a dog collar that tickles the dog and is funded by Y Combinator. He's got billions, right? And
is this a real product?
No, I remember meeting such kind of a product. It was at a startup meetup in New York, actually. I remember, and they were VC funded. Yeah, it was for the dog collar. And then I was thinking, in Africa, we've got people that are solving fundamental, real life issues, serious problems, right? So you find that as nations develop, they start worrying about, those first world problems about, is it Woolies water or is it Pick and Pay water, kind of thing, of which there are some people that don't have water. So we have real problems, but that is an opportunity to actually use these technologies or come up with solutions that are really meaningful, right? So, but it takes, obviously, willingness from the government, capability from office bearers, and it doesn't have to be national government, even local government. I mean, if we could get knowledgeable guys like you, MBAs, into some rural municipality, then they would benefit and would be able to, from ground up, solve our problems. But unfortunately, our learned people are leaving, right? Anyone who's got a good idea or good in engineering, they'll go to Silicon Valley, Estonia nowadays, even France, Netherlands, people are leaving. And then you also have a situation where I think 9 out of 10 of my friends, they're here physically, but their companies are in Delaware, in the US and Europe. They're not here, right? So they're not even paying tax here. Look at the unicorns like your Flutterwave, your Paystack, your African unicorns. They're all Delaware companies, unfortunately. So we are not exploiting our problems to come with new technology, to come with new ways of solving things. We are literally reduced to super users of technology coming out from elsewhere, right? That means that we are not working to own the means of production. Yeah, I know Julius Malema and them might be talking about land and all that. Yes, land, if it was the feudal era, yes, land was the only means of production. But now, if you're applauding me for coming up with a food app. Where's that app sitting? It's sitting on the Apple Store, on the Android Play Store, or Huawei. Who is that? So that means that whatever I'm doing, I'm paying rent to Steve Jobs' estate on the Apple iStore, you know? So that means Steve Jobs, in as much as he has departed, he still has a stranglehold on us, because whatever we're innovating on top of, right? I mean, what stops Africa from having their own Play Store? What stops Africa from having their own tier one fundamental infrastructure, you know? Like, we don't have foundational models in Africa. That's why you find that when you go on ChatGPT and you say, can I get a woman? It'll give you a white woman, right? Because that's the corpus of data that it lent on. We don't have enough data about ourselves, about our languages, So the fact that we are behind, the fact that we have problems, should actually motivate us to be prolific problem solvers. We should actually be the voice of reason in this time where people are looking at playing with their toys, going to Mars or whatever, you know what I mean? We should be saying, okay, let's solve Earth issues here, because this is where we are. Our problems are now, and you know. So it's a framing problem.
Do you think that's the only thing that's stopping us? What else do you think is stopping us?
Obviously, things like corruption. We are our own enemies. We're not doing justice to ourselves, whether the little income that we have from selling of our resources, right? We are not utilizing it and investing it back into communities and making sure that so we are our own enemies. And obviously, the inequalities and the structure of the world anyway, is such that we are at a disadvantage. I'll give you an example. If South Africa was to borrow $100 from the IMF and the US was to borrow $100 from the IMF, our interest rate that we have to pay there is way greater than that of the US or France or anything like that. So already, when we go to the markets to borrow, we are already at a disadvantage. So these are things that we should be able to use our collective power as the global South to change that, you know? Yeah.
Amazing. I love that as a vision. And I think that is what we should be working towards. And I think we tend to work against ourselves, as you said.
Yeah.
If you had to hazard a guess, how much do you think the industry, marketing, creative, advertising, will potentially retract? We're already seeing some movement.
Yeah.
How much do you think, as a mathematician, we should be expecting?
So I'm going to answer like a politician. Okay, so before I answer you, right, I think we should also ask fundamental questions to say, do we need agencies, right? Or the structure of the agency, what should it look like, you know? Because don't forget that back in the days, agencies were just one big thing. And then along the way, we cut them into creative, into this, some specialization.
Media.
But now you can see now there's some consolidation going back again. So I don't know if we're going back to the old structure or whatever. And the consolidation is consolidation, but with a fewer people, right? So we need to also understand that the org structure is changing. It gives an opportunity to lower costs generally. And then I think, okay, if I'm to give this is like a back of the envelope guess that I'm coming up with. I think 60%, at least 60% of current GDP of the industry is gonna disappear. That's what I think.
60%.
60.
So we're left with 40.
And I think I'm being conservative.
So your conservative estimate is that the advertising industry, and assuming you're including the agency world within that, of course, that would include other constituent parts and parts on the outside, the outskirts.
That's it.
Your back of the envelope estimate is that it retracts by 60% as an industry.
Yes.
And that would place 40% in a remarkable position who managed to hold onto the space.
Yes.
It may mean repositioning. It may mean changing of the strategy. If you were facing that, what would you do if you saw that coming?
Yeah.
What would you be preparing?
So, like right now, there's a course I created. It's an AI fluency specific to agencies that a number of agencies are actually taking. The emphasis is on understanding the workings of AI in the new world and being able to unlearn what you know and have a framework approach where you're flexible enough to be able to pivot into other industries. Because if you've got the foundational knowledge and you are not a slave of any domain, then you should have the flexibility to pivot, whether it's going to be an emergent industry that doesn't exist yet, or it's going to be consolidation of other industries that exist already, but maybe their nature has changed. You should be able to fit in, you know. So we need to be able to learn fast. We need to be flexible. We need to be able to understand and be able to envision a future where this industry doesn't exist.
Can I jump in with the question? I do have something that's kind of on my mind about what you said. It's around, we use AI because it's convenient, it's quicker, we get a little lazy. But the reality, as somebody who works in marketing, is that brands are actually expecting more from us in less time with less budgets, which forces us to use AI, to be quite frank with you. So what needs to change in the way that we meet growing demands? Because it doesn't seem like we're able to stop the fact that demands are growing. People want more for less.
Yeah. So there's an economist, I've forgotten his name, but Jeremy Rifkin. Jeremy Rifkin. He talks about how the third industrial revolution made information almost like zero marginal cost of acquisition. And then now with AI, you find that the costs, we'll get into the credit costs, right? They're not necessarily cheaper, right? But the access to the ability and capability of generating assets, like you say, at volume, is accessible, but not necessarily cheaper, because we know that the credit economy is actually spiraling out of comprehension. So you have to actually model to say, can you lower the price and simultaneously increase the margin, right? Can you do that simultaneously? And now this is where some interventions like layoffs, unfortunately, have to happen. Deeper automation, such that you lower your costs so much, such that even if the income is lower, but your margins are still higher than they were before. You know, and there's that argument that has been going around to say it's a modeling issue, and also in terms of swaying your customers, there has to be a lot of lobbying from agencies to brands, because right now, like I said, they are hysterical in trying to prove that they are going with the times in terms of technology. They want to write that in their year-end report. They want to put headlines that we use AI to do this, So, and this is short-termism, unfortunately. You know, quite a number of brands that took back functions internally are going back to agencies, actually. So I believe that in as much as the GDP of the industry is going to shrink, quality creative is going to win at the end of the day. It's going to be like a handmade Rolls Royce. It's going to be super expensive, but super desirable because it's rare. So very soon, because if you look at it, there's more AI information on the internet than there was there before 2022. You know that, right? We're generating so much. So that means that human things are going to be very rare and very expensive, right? So that's the hope that we should hold on to say, when we see this thing, I'm like, oh, it's human made. You'll be willing to pay a fortune for that. So that's the saving grace. But the reality is that our CMOs are going with headlines.
Mm. Let's talk about that human made. If I could sum that up, the scarcity of human product increases the price. The more scarce it gets, the more expensive it gets.
That's it.
Economics, demand and supply.
Yes.
Throwing terms out there that I'm aware of. The reality is that in markets like that, exclusivity, essentially comes out as a product of that. When it gets more expensive, less people can buy it.
That's it.
When less people can buy it, it gets rarer, it gets more expensive.
That's it.
There's a decommoditization
That's it.
of the creative service. And in that scarce market, the reality is there aren't going to be too many providers.
Yes.
Because you used to be able to get horseshoes very easily. Now it's quite hard.
It's quite hard.
It's quite hard. And it's even rarer to get a horseshoe made by somebody by hand.
That's it.
So if that's the case, this industry goes through quite a remarkable shift from being what is considered right now a replaceable commodity to an irreplaceable, rare non-commodity.
That's it.
And low amounts of survivors.
No, I mean, look at it in our present day as an analogy. When I grew up, we used to grow our own mangoes. We used to grow our own vegetables but with the urbanization that has happened, very few people have got the capacity to actually grow their own food. Now, if you go into the supermarkets, you'll find to get a sweet potato, organic sweet potato, you pay a premium for that, right? To buy a mango now, even a GMO, unfortunately, you're paying a fortune. And if it's organic, then they even triple the price. So that's the same concept where there are fewer producers, right? But it's extremely desirable, valuable, in as much as there are many players that are offering low quality stuff that's commoditized. So that's the hope, that creative excellence is going to win the day.
Let's hope so. If you had to look back on your history, you look back from University of Zim to advising the African Union to being in the position that you're currently in now, what do you think is one of your most important learnings at a human level? Like, what is the thing that makes you really different now that you wish you'd learned earlier?
You know, the one thing is that the limits that we have are self-made, unfortunately. And the concept is actually encapsulated in the story of Roger Bannister. I don't know if you know the story.
Tell us.
Roger Bannister was before he ran a mile under 4 minutes, it was considered impossible. No one ran it. But the day that Roger Bannister ran a mile in that time, everybody started doing it. So it means that there was a collective consciousness which was blocking the idea of being able to run under that time. So these limits, some are individual, some are collective, but they don't exist. They exist in our minds. And a collective mind actually affects how we progress as a people. If right now the majority of people in South Africa agree that it's the foreigners that are stopping them from moving forward, they'll never move forward because the collective consciousness has placed a limit on the ability of people. So they'll never, ever come out of that shell, It's Africa. If colonialism, whatever it came with, is our limit that we have decided to put on ourselves, because we're not the only ones that were colonized. China was colonized, you know that, right? By the Brits. India was colonized. There were so many places that were colonized, but they have managed to remove the shackles of colonialism and be able to determine their own future. We are still blaming the colonialist. Up to when, I have no idea. But we have the responsibility to actually remove those limitations. So the greatest learning that I've learned is that there are no limits.
I love that. If you had to consider the conversation we had before we stopped momentarily, we were talking about an industry being rapidly reduced in size. And the subject came up off camera around the concept of being anti-fragile. This concept of being highly adaptable, we've already talked about.
Yeah.
What would your advice be for an industry outside of the course and advising people to do the course? What would your advice be to the people in this industry who are about to be disrupted? How could they make themselves more anti-fragile?
I always say, I was not born a mathematician. I was not born a data scientist. It's a choice I made based on the circumstances that I happened to encounter along the way. I'll tell you why. Because the high school I went to, it was more prestigious to do maths, physics, and chemistry at A level. You could get the girls. You could be respected because you were doing maths, physics, and chemistry. On the hierarchy of subjects, that actually forced us to follow that route because it was the societally, it was the thing to do, And then along the way, I could have chosen to be a pastor and start a church, but I'm here, right? So same with everyone in the industry. No one was born a brand strategist. We all have innate capabilities to reinvent ourselves and take 90-degree turns or 180-degree turns and start afresh, right? And every opportunity that we have right now, if people are still employed, they should make sure that they are preparing for any eventuality, whether positive or negative. They should not be found unstable, right? They should make sure that their base is strong and they, like I said before, they can pivot into any other industry. If it means I have to now learn how to be behind the camera because I feel like the people behind the camera have a better chance of survival, then I'll have to learn those skills. So the unlearning is at the center of being anti-fragile, being adaptive, and also making sure that you don't hold on to those things that are no longer useful. Because there are people that, even as I'm offering that course, they're like, I'm a brand strategist. Why am I doing this? Right? And I'll tell them, I am a mathematician, but I created this. Right? As a counter argument to say, we got to be uncomfortable. So let's be uncomfortable and let us do what we have to do in order to be able to swim in these rough waters.
I've learned so much from you today already, and I'm so glad selfishly that we got this time together.
Sure.
I'm going to try to thread, through some of these loops that we've discussed. We started our conversation really around how these first principles of thinking govern us already.
Can I jump into that one?
Yeah,
because
of course.
I feel like we skirted over first principles.
Yeah, go into more detail.
Sure.
Please.
No, first principles, right? It's something that I learned where it's a way of seeing things, right? And Elon Musk likes to say it's a physics way of doing things, but it's applicable across the board. So someone will ask you, the Roman Catholic Church, Kim Kardashian, and Kaiser Chiefs, what businesses are they in, right? If you look at Kim Kardashian, she has millions of followers on social media. She can create emojis. She actually did that. She can create emojis and sell emojis. And she can make $1 million from those emojis because she has enough followers to buy an emoji at $1. Or she can say, brand X, let me wear your clothes, and people will end up buying because she's worn those clothes, right? Look at Kaiser Chiefs. It's got 1 million followers that fill up the stadiums every other week, right? Look at the Roman Catholic Church. Any church for that matter. I'm just saying Roman Catholic because that's the one that came to mind, right? They fill up churches every week, right? But if you look at it, they're all networks. This one is an individual. This one identifies as a football team. This one identifies as a church. But at the end of the day, their structure, their business model is exactly the same, So the ability to be able to take these three entities that look so different and strip the noise, right? Such that you look at the bare bones of their business model, then you actually realize it's the same. So we generally operate at the noise level, where because I identify as a soccer team, you don't see that I am actually a Kim Kardashian, right? Because Kim Kardashian can go to Holland and say, Holland, I can sell insurance, right? Same thing as Kaiser Chiefs did, right? Same concept. We can make money from what? From rebates, from commission, from margins, same concept. So that is a way of thinking that we have to look at what is the actual problem and not try and solve the symptoms.
Core problem.
The core problem.
You say that. Yeah, that's brilliant. I would call them all a brand.
That's it. Yes.
We've spoken about everything from attribution modeling to system building to, your influences as an individual. We've gone through Plato's Allegory of the cave, through to, understanding and interpreting a version of reality and how AI can't necessarily do that the way that we do, at least for now.
No.
We've also spoken about how in our country, on our continent, we need to approach problem solving in a different way to how it's currently being framed, at least globally and sometimes locally, how we can sometimes be our worst enemy. You left us with an incredible learning for me, or good reminder rather, that our beliefs can be so self-limiting. Sometimes just because we believe it, we limit ourselves. And to open the aperture of that is so important. I've learned so much from you in the course of this, and of course, researching you, there's so many more questions that I don't have time to ask you, and I hope we have you on again so I can ask you some of those questions. The fundamental that I really am walking away with now, because we talked about how my particular industry is retracting, and there will be real new constraints that I have to act within, that my company will, that our companies will, that the industry as a whole will have to work in. I come back to this concept of adaptability, being able to unlearn. And it really feels like that's a common theme throughout the course of this and throughout the course of your career. As you said, you spoke almost deterministically, so in terms of a school of thought, as to like how you got into mathematics and where you're currently, positioning yourself right now, some decisions that were made, yes, along the way. The most important thing for me as a takeaway, again, selfishly, is that essence of humanity that you spoke to, and how important it is for the individuals in this industry. Of course, we talked about, something that could be considered a threat. How do we look for the opportunity? How do we seek the opportunity in that? Yeah. And the opportunity really does seem to lie in that essence of humanity, in our own beliefs, hopefully non-self-limiting, the intangible stuff, our ability to unlearn all of the stuff that we're currently constraining ourselves with, those self-limiting beliefs, and adapt. Would you say that's a somewhat fair summary, because we had such a wide-ranging conversation?
No, I think you captured it very well. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I've loved this. Thank you. Sure. And perhaps tell us a little bit more about where people can find you, find Akalytica, and all the other work that you do.
So I think the place where I'm really active is LinkedIn. The rest I struggle. So I'm Edzai Jobo on LinkedIn, and Akalytica is also on LinkedIn. Or you could just go to the Akalytica website, where you can create link in bio pages for free and stuff like that. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much,
Sure,
Edzai.
thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
The Never Think Alone podcast is brought to you by my tech and experience design agency, Plus Narrative. Plus Narrative has been focused on people-first development, design, and strategy since 2013. I'm a little biased, but if you have an innovation, user experience, or software project brief, or you just need a trained strategist to facilitate your next workshop, I cannot think of a better team to help. We're based in South Africa and Mauritius, so we work with clients and companies all over the world. If you want to find out more, go to plusnarrative.com. We'll put a link in the show notes too. That's plusnarrative.com.